Okay. How are you, everybody? This one there is again the extension or the continued from the evidence from paleontology section evolution, grade 12 evolution, unit 4. And this section, in relation to fossil record or paleontology, we shall see this fact that means determining the age of fossils. Fossils can be used to determine the age of fossils, and the sedimentary rocks are also, since are composed of living materials, can be used to determine the age of rocks. Now, this is the technique or the process known as dating fossils. Dating fossil means simply measuring fossils, measuring the age of fossils obtained from different sources. We do have two major types of measuring fossils, the age of fossils, or dating fossils. One is relative dating, the other is the more reliable method, that is radioactive dating by using radioactive isotopes that may be found in living systems which undergo decay in a fixed time period, which is known as half-life. Therefore, we consider that, and I will come to that point anyway. Therefore, the two major types of dating fossils, the age of fossils, are relative dating and radioactive dating methods. Fossil age can be determined using two ways: absolute dating, which determines the number of years that have elapsed since an event occurred, or the specific time when that event occurred. On the other hand, relative dating determines the age by analyzing rocks and structures placed into chronological order, establishing the age of one thing as older as or younger than the other. The relative dating method is, of course, crude method. I will show you. The absolute dating method or the radioactive dating method is much accurate. Exact age of a rock, exact age of a fossil can be measured by using radioactive materials in the fossil, of course. Sedimentary rocks are laid down in layers when it comes to the relative dating. Relative dating, the relative dating looks at the layer of the earth. You dig down the layer of the earth, which contains fossils, and the oldest fossil will be deeper. The youngest is at the top in a layer of land, top to bottom. When you observe, cut down the earth, and the deepest fossil is the oldest. The topmost fossil is the youngest. This is relative dating, relative to the position of that fossil. We give age that is crude way. You don't exactly know the age. They see simply you tell this is young, more recent. This is the oldest. This is intermediate between in terms of age. Otherwise, there is no exact measurement of the age. The exact measurement of the age is obtained by using the radioactive dating method, which is also known as the absolute dating method. This is a relative dating method. Sedimentary rocks are laid down in layers or strata, which help to deduce how the organisms have changed over time. This is called stratigraphy. That means the layers of rocks or sedimentary rocks in a land system formed at different times of the land that formed at different times form layers. Sedimentary rocks form layers. In these layers, the different layers contain different fossils, and these layers of fossils or sedimentary rocks are known as stratigraphy. And as I have told you, the topmost is the youngest, the most bottom one is the deepest one is the oldest. You can see the oldest strata and the oldest fossils are found in the lowest layers. and more recent rocks or fossils in the layers above them, nearest to the surface. The thickness of each stratum, again, thickness of each stratum in stratigraphy, the thickness of each stratum is a measure of the time period during which that stratum was formed. The thickness. Therefore, the thicker it is, the much longer time it took to form that thickness. And you can see here, if this is a layer of earth dug down, and the top layer and the bottom layer, you can see at different strata. This stratigraphy means these the layers of sedimentary rocks. Each layer contains its own fossil, Therefore, those fossils found at the bottom, here are the oldest fossils. These are considered the oldest fossils, whereas those found at the top near the surface of the earth are the youngest. Therefore, the thickness of the strata, the thickness of each stratum tells you the length of period to be formed. Therefore, this is relative dating. The other type of dating is the absolute dating method, radioactive dating method. We shall focus a little on this one because it is much more used. Because you need to absolutely know the age of rocks, not simply estimate. Radioactive dating, also known as radiometric dating. Some minerals in rocks or organic matter, example wood, bones, shells, can contain radioactive isotopes, elements with radioactivity. That unique property of these some elements with that is known as radioactivity. What does it mean? That means they emit. They release a radiation and change it to another stable substance, daughter substance, in a fixed time period. Therefore, if a certain rock or fossil has radioactive substance inside it, by using these radioactive isotopes or elements, we can measure the age of rocks exactly. Some isotopes are radioactive and undergo radioactive decay. They undergo decay. When they decay, they undergo decay, they do it by within a fixed time period, which is known as half-life. During radioactive decay, the isotope gives off particles and energy, changing its identity to a different element. We call it daughter element. See? When that radioactive substance decays, it changes into daughter element. It releases particles and energy, changes its identity into a different element called daughter element. The decay occurs during a constant rate, that is half-life. And what's half-life? The half-life of an element, that is a radioactive element, is the time it takes for half of the atoms in a sample of radioactive substance to undergo radioactive decay. You see, if there is X amount of radioactive substance, first, after one half-life, it becomes half X. After another half-life, half X becomes 1/4X. That fixed time period is known as half-life. Therefore, half-life is where the half of a radioactive substance is lost by radioactive decay. You can see here, when an atom has an equal number of protons and neutrons, it is radioactive, unstable, and begins to break apart in a process called radioactive decay. You can see here radioactive decay, radioactive atom losing energy radiation, particles, and changing into a stable substance, which is known as daughter element. Therefore, the parent material, the unstable radioactive material, for example, carbon 14 is radioactive. We do have three isotopes of carbon: carbon 12, carbon 13, and carbon 14. Carbon 14 is only a radioactive type. Carbon 14. Carbon 14 is unstable, undergoes radioactive decay in order to change into nitrogen 14. Nitrogen 14, more stable form. Therefore, nitrogen 14 is the daughter element for carbon 14. When carbon 14 changes into nitrogen 14 by losing its half amount, it does this within a fixed time period, and the half-life of carbon 14 is 5,700 years. 5,700 years. The abundance of parent and daughter isotopes in a sample can be measured and used to determine their age. You see, if you know a certain fossil has radioactive element, by detecting the amount left in course of time, you may give exact age of that rock, or by comparing the parent and the daughter isotopes in a sample, because the parent changes into daughter element, the parent radioactive substance or element changes into, therefore you compare this in a sample, measure and use to determine the age. Determined by remaining radioactive isotopes the fossil contains, of course. At time zero, for example, look, at time zero, the sample is composed entirely of radioisotope, never undergone decay. And the radioactive clock begins ticking, radioactive time begins ticking. Then, after one half-life, only 50% of the original radioisotope remains. During each succeeding half-life, half of the remaining radioisotope is converted to decay product or the daughter product. And let me show you with example, radioactive potassium 40 is radioactive. Radioactive potassium decays to produce its daughter element known as argon 40. Its half-life is 1.3 billion years. Oh, this is really huge. Such radioactive elements can be used to measure fossils that have millions of years of age. Now, radioactive carbon 40 decays to produce nitrogen 14. Its half-life is 5,700 years. Now, look, you can have this table, isotope age dating. Carbon 14, I have told you, its daughter element is nitrogen. Potassium 14 is argon 40. The others are rubidium. Rubidium changes into strontium. Uranium changes into lead. Again, uranium changes into lead. Lead 206 and lead 207 in this case. Uranium 238 changes to uranium 200. Lead 206. Therefore, the half-lives are given here. Half-lives for carbon 5,730. Of course, usually for calculation we use 5,700. For potassium 40, 1.3 billion years. Rubidium 47 billion years. Uranium 4.5 billion years. Uranium 238. Uranium 235 710 million years. And therefore, what happens can be described by using such a graph. You see, the x-axis tells you the half-life elapsed half-lives, one half-life, two half-lives, three half-lives. You see, and the y-axis tells you the amount, the remaining. You see, assume that the fossil contains the intact radioactive substance. It hasn't lost it. It contains all the radioactive substance, 100%. Then, after one half-life, as you observe here, after one half-life, 50% has been lost. Then, another half-life, 50%, 50% of 50 is just 25 here. Therefore, again, the third half-life, half of 25 here. Half of 25 is what? 12.5. And we go just like this, you will get such a graph. You see, the amount of radioactive substance is decreasing, and the half-life, as half-life increases here. You see, you can have also such a graph. You see, the radioactive substance is keeping decreasing as the number of half-lives increase here. This one graph, the dotted graph, shows you the amount of daughter element. The radioactive substance is decreasing, the daughter element is increasing proportionally. You see, therefore, one half-life, 50%, two half-life, 25%, three half-life, 12.5%. You go just like this. If it's for half-life, half of 12.5% is 6.25%. And you go just like this, and you get this graph. And this is also similar for carbon. In this case, for carbon, converting the percentage of carbon-14. Now, there is 100% carbon-14 is certain fossil. It doesn't undergo radioactive decay. It didn't lose. After one half-life, the amount 100% became 50%. And within what time period? Within 5,730 years. Again, after another 5,730 in this case, now it has reached to 11,480. 25% is remaining. From this 25%, again additional 5,730 years. After 5,730 years, half of 25% is lost, and the age becomes 17,910, and the amount remained is 12.5. Again, from this 12.5, after 5,730 years, half of this 12.5 remains, that is 6.25. The age is 22. Add 5,730 into 17,910, it becomes 22,920. Again, after one half-life, that is 5,730, half of 6.25 remains, that is 3.125. We go like this, just like this. This is for carbon specifically. Okay? And types of commonly used radioactive dating. I've shown you many radioactive elements like uranium-235 and 238, and rubidium. The most commonly used are carbon and potassium argon dating, radiocarbon dating or carbon-14 dating, and potassium-14 dating or potassium argon dating methods. You can see radioactive carbon dating. Every living organism contains some fixed amount of carbon-14. Of course, most of our organic compounds are composed of which carbon? Carbon-12. Still, every living organism contains almost similar, a fixed amount of carbon-14, because there is some amount of carbon-14 in the atmosphere. It goes to plants, from plants through food chain, it also comes. Therefore, every living organism contains some amount of radioactive isotope, carbon-14. You see, carbon-14. Therefore, when we are buried, when we die, our fossils, when we die, the carbon 14 in each half-life starts to lose half its content, half its amount. And by using this and calculating the remaining amount of carbon 14 in a fossil, we can calculate the age of fossils or rocks that may contain living specimen or radioactive specimen. Therefore, living organisms absorb carbon 14 and carbon 12 and carbon 14. The ratio is constant. When organisms die, it no longer absorbs carbon 14, right, or no longer absorbs carbon. So carbon 14 radioactive begins to decay and decreases, while carbon 12 non-radioactive stays the same. Carbon 14 half-life every 5,000, this is mistake, 5,700 years. Look at the ratio of carbon 14 and carbon 12 and compare to living organisms, the amount in living organisms, and you can calculate the age of the fossil or that particular specimen. Potassium argon dating. Potassium argon dating is used for rocks that are suspected of billions of years old. And the older rocks, the ratio of argon to potassium will be higher than in younger rocks. You see, when the rocks are older, this means much of potassium 14 has been changed into argon. Therefore, the ratio of argon 14 to the ratio of potassium 14 becomes higher, because in the younger rocks the potassium has not yet started to decay to argon. Both these techniques rely on the principle that radioactive atoms decay into other atoms over time. This is repeated. Radioactive carbon atoms decay into non-radioactive nitrogen, the daughter element. Radioactive potassium decay into argon 14. Each has what is known as half-life, as I've tried to show you. So starting with a certain amount of radioactive element, after one half-life, 50% will still be radioactive. After a second half-life, 50% of this will have decayed and 25% of the original will still be radioactive. And the list goes on and on. This is an example here. When atoms of an isotope decay, they do so at a certain rate. The time required for half of the atoms in an element to decay is called the half-life. You can see here the parent material, the original material, contains 100%. After one half-life, first half-life, 50% remains. After first half-life, after second half-life, 25% remains. After third half-life, 12.5% remains. After four half-lives, of course, 6.25%. The list goes on. And when we see also when the radioactive substance is losing its mass, the daughter material is gaining mass. After the first half-life, the daughter material, the daughter element, will be 50%. After the second half-life, the daughter element will be 75%. After the third, the daughter element will be 100%, of course. Then you can see this. This is eras in geology, paleontology, eras, Precambrian era, Paleozoic era, Mesozoic era, Cenozoic era. These are era. Time millions of years. Then you can see the different types of organisms that appeared on our Earth depicted here. For example, in a Precambrian era, of course, invertebrates here. At the Paleozoic era, you have reptiles are there. insects, and some simple plants are there. In the Paleozoic era, uh, Mesozoic era, there are larger animals, including dinosaurs, of course, you observe there. Um, the Cenozoic era, you can see mammals there, including the humanoids or the human ancestors, of course, studied problems related to radioactive dating. You can have these problems too. This, for example, the first. Let me do the first for you. If 8 gram of carbon 14 is found in a fossil and 16 gram in living organisms, you see, living organisms contain 60 gram carbon 14, whereas a fossil contains 8 gram. What does this mean? When compared to the living organisms, the fossil has lost 50%, half. 8 is half of 16, which means the fossil has undergone one half life since its days. That is, it is carbon 14, its half life is 5,700. Therefore, the age of the rock is 5,700 years. The ratio of the amount of remaining carbon in a fossil to the original amount is to the 3 gram carbon 14 in fossil is 1 to 16. That means, of course, there is mistake in this problem. I'll come to the ratio. Simply the ratio, the amount of remaining carbon in a fossil to the original amount. The original amount is 1 to 16. The ratio is this one. Now we have 1. The original is 16, 1 to 216 ratio. What is the age of the fossil?